I'm here today with a video about making multiple Christmas cards. I am curious, I would love all of you guys to put this in the comments. How many of these do you make a year? I make between 50 to 80, and I'm always looking for ways to make it a little less expensive, a little less involved, but still look amazing. So that's what I'm gonna share with you today. Some cards that really have a good wow factor, but they really don't take too terribly long to make. And even though you're making multiples, they don't have to be exactly the same. So that's one thing. I get a little tired of creating the exact same pattern over and over again. So I'm going to show you how I did that and give you some helpful tips. I also have an announcement to make. I've been chosen as a speaker, which means I'm making a video class for the Card Maker Success Summit. You don't have to remember that name. It'll be in the links in the description. We are starting the waitlist now, so I wanted to make sure that you click through that link and go ahead and join the waitlist, and then you will get notifications of when it's time to sign up. There's a free pass, there is a paid pass, and there are lots of freebies that go along with this. So I just want to make sure that everybody knows about it, and I would appreciate it so much if you'd go ahead and click the link and sign up on the waitlist. So let's get right into this video. Okay, let's look at what we're going to use today. I have this die right here from Fawn that has got cross-stitch X's around the edge, and it cuts out an A2 size card. I feel like that is something that makes things a lot easier, is to have a die or some way to quickly cut lots of card bases. So I'm going to use this as my card base. I'm also going to use a circle, like just stitched in some of them too, but mainly that is my card base. I'm going to use this stamp set, which is by Maker Forte, and it has these large words with a little nativity scene in the word. So just kind of gives the word a little bit more detail, but it's going to be a big heat embossed area, and we're going to use this on watercolor paper. I'm using my Canson watercolor pad because it's a little cheaper than my Arches watercolor paper, and I know I'm mass producing this, so I want to make sure I don't break the bank. So hack number one, use a die to cut out your card bases. I think this makes it very easy. This pad of paper is a 9 by 12, so I can cut it into two 6-inch sections, which is perfect for an A2 card. I also use this just stitched circle for some of the card bases and just cut them with a paper trimmer. And of course you could cut as many of these as you want. I just did probably, I think, around 10 just to get started on this project, because I do like to make all my Christmas cards slightly different. So I'm going to do about 10 this way, and then of course I'm going to make some others. So I'm going to start with the piece stamp from this stamp set, partly because I think I'm going to do most of mine in landscape, and the piece is a longer word, so it fits really well on that page, and it also just takes up a lot of space. So I'm going to do the piece, and this is the first time I've used this. So anytime you're peeling off your stamp for the first time, you want to make sure and rub on the stamp part. You can do this with an eraser, you can do it with your fingers, but the part that's actually going to be stamping, you really need to get any like extra residue or anything like that off. So it almost turns a little cloudy when you do this. So just make sure you do that with your stamps. And then I'm going to show you one of my hacks, which is to use a stamp positioner and use washi tape. Okay, let's talk about hack number two, which is to use a stamp positioner. I'm going to be using the MISTI, which I know a lot of you have, but there's other options out there. With the MISTI, the front panel has a grid, and so does this pad that I'm using underneath my paper. It also has a grid. So I'm trying to make sure that everything is level, that things are lined up on a line. So you'll see me move that piece of paper to where it's lined up perfectly square up at the top. And that helps with your positioning. You can always move your stamp around as needed. And one nice thing about a word stamp is that with the grid on the front, you can really look at that grid and make sure if you've got your paper level, then it needs to be level on this grid too. So it's hard to see that grid, but I'm making sure that my stamp is perfectly aligned on one of these little grid lines. I'll show you with an arrow. Because these lines are light colored, a lot of times I'll use my T-ruler too to make sure that I've got that perfectly level and all the lines lined up. So it just helps me see from the outside of the thing if I need to. Now I'm going to use my powder bag which is also called an anti-static powder tool, and I'm going to put this all around. It still is not going to get under where those magnets are, so sometimes you'll have a little sticking to that area, but I don't want to risk moving my paper by lifting those up and powdering underneath them. So I just do that. I love this little bin to hold them in. And then now I'm going to use Versamark ink. You could use any embossing ink and stamp this several times. I always feel like I need to do this 2 to 3 times on watercolor paper. I don't know if it actually soaks the ink into it or if it's just slightly a rough texture, but it definitely helps me to do it several times to make sure I've got everything covered. So because this is white, it's hard to see. I'll bring it up. You can see that watermark, but it is difficult. You want to make sure you look at it in different lights and that you've got all the pieces of the letters and the little intricate details, which I do. Before I take this off, I am going to add some washi tape so that I have a way to put the next piece of paper in the exact right place. This is hack number 3. So let's look at how we do that. So I'm going to grab some washi tape. It doesn't matter what kind, just so that it sticks. And I'm going to line it up perfectly along the side of this card. And then we're going to make some corners so that we'll be able to fit our next card into this. Now you could do this same idea by just lining your card up in the corner, but I have a couple of problems with that. One, these longer stamps, I feel like I can't hold my paper down as well with my magnets, and I will have trouble stamping towards the edge of the pink over there, the pink ruler. So you can do it that way, but I've always had trouble with it. The other problem I have is if I slide it way into that corner, sometimes my mat underneath it moves ever so slightly, and that drives me crazy. So I definitely like to have it out in the middle and just tape. So we're going to cover this with some embossing powder. This is a Wow embossing powder, and this is the one called Ultra High. That is a very fun embossing powder for when you're using a big area and you don't need too much detail, but you want it to really stand out. It's almost like it's layering multiple pieces. The downside is they're very big granules, and so sometimes you'll have some open space where they are, but I just love the way it looks. Here's how that Ultra High looks. You see how thick it is? It really stands out off the paper, which looks really cool. When you're heating up watercolor paper, really any paper, you want to make sure you're doing some from the back and some from the front. With this Ultra High, I feel like you really need to go from the back because those big granules can blow away very easily, and it just makes a better outcome if you do it from the behind the image. So now all I have to do with the next one is slide the piece of paper right in this little box that I've made for it. So I'll show you how that works, and I'll put my magnets back on, we'll powder it, and we're going to emboss the same word again. So I wanted to show you a different type of embossing powder. I really liked how this one turned out, and this one is a fine embossing powder. So this is the Hero Arts White Satin Pearl, one of Jennifer McGuire's favorites, and we're going to use it on this, and I'm going to show you kind of the difference in the look when you use a fine versus that Ultra High. You can probably already tell this is a finer powder, and so that means that it's going to stick to small areas a little bit easier versus those large granules of the Ultra High. So when this comes off, I know it's also white, so that kind of makes it hard to see. You can see it sticks really well. I'm going to tap it off, and then if I see any areas that still aren't coming off and they're not where they're supposed to be, I'll use a little bit of a brush and rub that off. So you can use a little paintbrush for this. I've had good luck just using a sharp pointed tool because it's almost like if you loosen up the powder where it's not supposed to be and just blow on it, it's going to go away and get off the paper. It's like it's just static to it just a little bit, and once you move it around, it works great. So hack number 4 is to make things similar but different. So I'm going to use different embossing powder. I'm going to use a couple different sentiments, but it's all going to be the same background, and we're generally using the same products for it. So you can see with the fine that it does make it a little bumpier, kind of like the bumpiness of the actual paper, but that really turns out quite cool. I'm going to show you some cool things with that later. I'm going to change the word stamp that I'm using and still use my same washi tape to hold the paper. I'll just line up the stamp where it needs to be. So we're going to do this love one, and that's just an easy way to change things up. Here's a quick little look at what the Ultra High Silver by Wow looks like. It, like I said, can miss a couple little spots, but man, it sticks up so much off the paper that it just looks amazing. I think that the Ultra Highs were my favorite on these cards. Now let's get to the watercolor. I taped washi all around my little cross-stitch X's so that I would have a white border on these. And then you can see to the side I'm using my Waffle Flower Media Mat, and I'm using these Nuvo shimmer powders. These give a subtle shimmer, kind of like the same idea of watercoloring and then putting perfect pearls over it. Maybe even more shimmer than that though. And so I'm going to use these because I feel like these just make the coolest effect. So I just add just a little bit of water, and I'm using my cheap, I know it looks blue, but I've gotten all the color out, my cheap little IKEA brush, because I like the size of this brush for just watercolor washing over this paper. So you just take it. I usually try to start with a little bit more at the top and then go down across the bottom. So if you've got enough space to do this, you could do so many cards so quickly with this watercolor, and then you can just dry it with a heat gun. So hack number 5 is easy but amazing looking backgrounds. This shimmer powder is one of my favorite ways to make an easy background because it shines and it just is so festive looking. If you want to add more color, you just add more powder and add it to your like I go up here to this top and just add just a little bit darker color. It does, so the shimmer powder is multiple color powders in one. That's why you see me mixing it up. So this purple is actually a red, a blue, and purple pigments all together. So if you don't mix them well, you'll see a little bit of that red and blue come through. And I didn't want that to happen, so I did mix mine a little bit better. But with others, if you want to be able to see it, sometimes that makes a cool effect in itself. So I just go back and forth over this until I'm happy with the way the lines are, and then I'm going to use a heat gun and dry it. So with the heat gun, I do try to keep it away from my embossing, but I have not had any trouble with that embossing messing up doing this. So I keep my heat gun away from it and try to dry all the rest of it while it's still taped down. I do this actually on my Waffle Flower Media Mat. That's a silicone mat, and the heat does not seem to bother it at all. So I like to do this because if you pick it up and it's still wet, it will make marks where the water kind of runs down the page. So just make sure you get it dry before you're about to pick it up. Then it's time to peel off this paper. So, well, I guess you call it washi. I usually take a little bit of a paper towel like you see right there, and if I see any standing water, I'll wipe it off. But with this washi paper, you see I left a great white border there, which really means that if I don't want to cut this panel down, this can just be my whole front panel. I don't have to worry about backing it, and that just makes a really nice, easy card. Now check out this shimmer. You see how the whole panel shimmers? It looks amazing. Another way to spice this up if you don't want just a plain colored panel is to make some stripes. So I'll take a couple of coordinating colors, and I do this quickly because I feel like it looks better when you do it fast. So that just works great for this kind of card because you can do it quickly. I do recommend letting that dry just a little bit before you add your next color. So I'm using blue Blitz, which is one of the shimmer powder colors. This one is a pretty solid blue. It doesn't have any other little colors in it that are going to show through, but I still mix it together just to be safe and get all the glimmer and shimmer that it has all mixed in together. But it's one of the ones that's a solid color. So once I let those stripes dry a little bit, I went back in with this green called Atlantic Burst. This does have some different colors in it, so you want to mix it together if you want it to be a solid green. And this green, really, when you put a lot of it on there, I love doing a real heavy application of this on cards and making it a really amazing teal background. It looks so good on Christmas cards. This color really pairs with red well. I mean, it looks awesome with purple. It's just a great color. If you're going to buy any color of Nuvo powder, I would buy Atlantic Burst. So here's how this one turned out. I almost feel like it looks like ocean waves. I like how the water from the Atlantic Burst kind of faded into the blue and just made like these little ripple effects to it. So just fun things you can come up with. Of course, I did a lot of these backgrounds off screen, but I wanted you to see how you can take this looks a little bit muddy on the piece, but what it is that it's got some of the shimmer powder stuck to the embossing. So I'm going to take a little wet Q-tip and just go along my letters, and you'll see how that brightens it up so much. So just remember to do that if you feel like you're not getting the bright pop you want from your embossing, that when you've painted over it like this, even though it doesn't seem like it, there is a little layer of that, and that's making your words not quite as bright. Hack number 6 is to use easy embellishments that maybe you don't think about using all the time. I got into my drawers and grabbed, you know, silver, gold, and some white colored things. I grabbed scraps of paper, especially gold fancy paper, and I just set it all next to me to look at and decide what I could add to each card to make it just a little bit different, but not spend too much time on it. So in this one, I just thought, what if I add a little something to this angel to make it stick out? And so I'm using these dream drops in Cloud, and they have a little iridescence to them. And then of course it's on top of something that's already iridescent. But I thought it just made this angel stand out and look so much prettier than it did just flat on the card. So just things like that that you don't always think about, get them out and use them. I also added some pearls on this of that same Nuvo drop, and I just thought that looked really cute. I'm going to go through all of the cards and kind of just point out things that I did that were different on each one so that you can see some options for embellishing them. So we'll do that real quick. It may be hard to tell in this picture, but I cut around the edges because I had a little bit of bleed through of the color of Nuvo Shimmer. So I cut off the X's on this one, and then I used a backing that is a shimmery, almost like snow colored piece of paper that really enhances the piece in that white satin pearl. This is one that I just did a quick purple wash on. I have that stitched circle, and then I decided to add some gold thread, and I even put a little gold embellishment right in the middle with a bow. So I thought that added a little bit to the bottom of this card. This card has 2 colors of the Nuvo Shimmer, that ultra high metallic silver, and then I used a few little silver embellishments and backed it in a pretty navy. With this one, I had this really fine frame pieces left over from something else, and I think that's made with an Altenew die. And so I put it around the outside edge of this, and then I added some purple clear hearts from Trinity Stamps. I thought that just made it look amazing. This is the one that I did with a white satin pearl embossing, and then I added these clear iridescent diamond jewels from Cat Scrappiness to top it off. This is one that I thought looked like the ocean, and I just think it's the coolest card. But I put some gold thread around the bottom, and that's all I did to embellish it, and it looks really good. I did this similar card right here with just some different colors, added a little bit more of that gold thread than I did on the previous one, and it just looks really great. So this next card is a couple different colors, a green and a red, which I will list in the description, and I just sprinkled a wet card with it. So you can see how they kind of fan out and have some yellows and blues and different colors in it. I think it makes a really cool effect on this card. So you could do that with any of these colors. So those 6 hacks again are pre-cut your paper, use a stamping tool, position with washi tape, multi-stamp, so lots of stamps, similar things. They don't have to be the exact same, but similar size would help. Pick an easy technique for the background. I like this watercolor wash, it really works well. And use some easy embellishments, even scraps of things that you've had before, and put those cards together. Thanks so much for sticking with me. Make sure you hit the subscribe, like, and notification button. Everything will be listed in the description below. And make sure you look at that info on the Card Maker Success Summit. I will put the link in the description. I hope that everybody enjoyed this video and get to making those Christmas cards. I hope to see you soon. Bye!